Hi, friends. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Dominican racial identity and some cultural traits that come from our racial identity in hopes that this allows you to understand a little bit more of the cultural complexities that you're going to experience once you're here in the Dominican Republic with an ILAC program. I'm going to be sharing my screen so that you can see the PowerPoint that I'll be using. And I hope that as you come up with any thoughts or ideas or questions throughout this presentation, you jot them down so that you can email me and let me know how I can help clarify things or what thoughts emerge from watching this. And my name is Margarita Dubuc, and I work for the ILAC Creighton office here in the Dominican Republic. And I want to start by telling you that I absolutely love this picture that I have used in the PowerPoint, as it has four people with different quote unquote colors of skin, also in the Dominican flag, showing that we are truly a melting pot here made by all these different groups of people. In the Dominican Republic, we have more than a dozen ways to describe the color of our skin, precisely because of some of the struggles that we have with our racial identity. And some of them we see depicted here, like Indio Claro over here, which literally translates to light indigenous. We cite oftentimes our indigenous blood as the reason for the color in our skin to try to avoid citing our Africanness. We see blanco, white, indio oscuro, dark Indian or indigenous, and negro, black. But all of these people, all of these colors and shades are part of the fabric of the Dominican Republic. So with that, I need to first tell you about the three heritages that conform the cultural background and racial identity of the Dominican Republic. And those are the indigenous that first inhabited this island, the Spaniards that conquered it, and the African slaves that were brought in by the Spaniards to work on this island. And according to Island Canberra in the book Quisqueya la Bella, the Dominican culture is exemplified by the mixture of the people whose origins sprang from profoundly rich heritages, which were those three: the indigenous, the Spanish, and the African. Now, it's important to know, since I mentioned that the Spaniards conquered this island, um, in knowing that there's a lot of historical connotation to that word, but keeping to the racial attitudes and to the cultural pieces that come from it, I want to tell you what the racial attitudes were like in Spain at the time of Columbus's sailing to the New World. Um, Spain had won an 800-year battle against the Moors or the Muslims over control for the Iberian Peninsula. And this very much made them feel a call to spread Christianity throughout the world and to see Christianity as the ultimate and true religion. So purity of blood, limpieza de sangre, was a central concept in cultural control for them. And that purity of blood was considered the pure Christian ancestry. So anybody who didn't have pure Christian ancestry was considered to be morally inferior, or to not have as good of a character as those with Christian ancestry. I'm talking about the Jews, the Muslims, the Gypsies, and so forth. Color was actually less important in slavery in the Iberian Peninsula and throughout the European continent. In fact, in countries such as Portugal, mixed marriages were allowed as early as the 1500s. And in Europe, you had people who were white who were slaves and people of color who were free. So it wasn't so much about color as much as it was about religion in the European continent. However, when it came to the Americas, and them wanting to still have that dominance, color turned to be the code by which racial attitudes were determined and by which slavery was also founded. So skin color and not religion became the main factor of this concept of purity of blood as the Spaniards and other Europeans came to the New World. So the idea of having mixed blood now not being purely white or Caucasian is what became a moral deficiency or intellectual inferiority. And I would say that this slide very much connects not only to the Dominican Republic, but also to most of the Americas, including the United States, because this is something that prevailed in your country too. And because of this, skin color is what determined the socioeconomic hierarchical position that a person could aspire to have in this island and throughout this continent. And we started seeing how the word Black became associated with the word slave, and the word Caucasian became associated with privilege and power. And I know that you're well aware of the fact that throughout our language, there's many other ways in which this dichotomy keeps being presented, and where there's a lot of negative things um, being referred to the color Black, like Black sheep of the family and so forth, and a lot of positive things that are attributed to the color white or its derivatives, like the ivory tower of education. And this is despite the fact that many Latinos who were African slaves that were previously Christianized play a crucial role in the initial quote unquote discovery by the Spaniards of this island of Hispaniola. But once they got here, they were backstabbed because they no longer were their equals as Christians, but instead became inferior because of the color of their skin. So this led to the forming of the identity of the Dominican Republic. And us Dominicans form an identity in relation to other places. So a pro-Spanish heritage, not African or Haitian. This led to some of the tensions that we have to this day with Haiti, which is a country that shares the same island as us, so shares the same original history. But because of who was a European power that eventually conquer them, the French, and the attitudes that they had towards their colony, has a very different way of viewing themselves. The Spanish always kept a numerical majority here, always repopulating pieces of land here with Spanish peasants when they saw that their numbers were dwindling. And this created an aura of being a mini Spain here. Whereas in modern day Haiti, the French didn't care so much to settle and oftentimes had a 1-to-5 ratio of French person to slave. Also, once Haiti was formed, or the French colony was formed, you only had two races playing a role there, the French people and the African slaves, as the indigenous had already become extinct. So there wasn't that plethora of cultures mix like we have on this side of the island. And in this identity, we still to this day see how us Dominicans struggle to celebrate our Africanness or to own up to our Africanness, whereas the Haitians are very much proud of it and being sons and daughters of former slaves who won their independence and became the first free Black republic of the world. So being mixed race or light skin here in the Dominican Republic, it's something that creates other issues of identity for Dominicans who migrate to either the United States or even Europe. Because of that, separation that we try to have from our Africanness and all those other shades of colors that we have come up with to avoid saying that somebody's Black, we don't see ourselves in those lights. And then when we are in another culture that perceives us in that way because of the way that we look, we struggle, and we have a lot of internal struggles over our racial identity. As like I've been saying, Black is a label that most Dominicans don't believe that describe us. However, much of our culture has traces of our Africanness. You can see it not only in our body shapes and features, but also in our music, in our musical instruments like drums that are very much African, in our carnival celebrations. You can even see it in the way that we express our Catholicism and Christianity that very much has traces of African folklore in it. You can see it in the bright colors in which we paint our houses, and in many other shades that we fail to acknowledge that are part of our Africanness. You can see it in some of our foods too, and some of our games and cultural traditions. So that's the reason why we use the expression that Dominicans have black behind the ear, to try to symbolize that whether we own it up or not, it's part of all of us and it's hidden there. Now, I'm aware of the fact that the African American community in the United States uses this phrase in a different connotation, to say what the shade of a baby is going to be like once they're born. But for us, it's a way of trying to say that whether we hide it or not, it's a part of us. Because in fact, uh, only 10% or less of the Dominican population to this day is still 100% Caucasian. About 10% or so, it's 100% African and or Black, and the other 80% of us are mixed. So 90% of us roughly are people of color that have all these traces in us, and our families very much look different, have a lot of blendedness in them, even though we don't want to own it. And I want to end by showing you a picture of carnival celebrations in the city of La Vega, which is very near where the ILAC Center is located, as this is one of the most popular carnival celebrations in our country and highlights some of those African folklore traces that I've been talking about. So I very much look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions, any comments, any thoughts, any reactions to this, I am all ears, or eyes in this case, and I look forward to receiving your email at mdubach@creighton.edu. Otherwise, all I have left to say is thank you, gracias, and I very much look forward to welcome you in the ILAC Center very shortly. Until then, bye.